All right, everybody, welcome to the Rugby League Coach podcast. I'd say what episode it was, but I've lost all the count of the episodes since Lee lost an episode, and we're at number 17, isn't it, Lee?
I think you'll find it is. I'll just do some research now. Now I've got the time. Now I'm not hosting this week.
I just, you had to double up on hosting because you lost the file, and I don't think anyone's quite
episode 17. Episode 17.
Well, then welcome to episode 17 of the Rugby League Coach podcast. We are joined by, of course, Mr. Lee Addison in the brown shirt there.
Hi.
I would say dashingly handsome. You got a spot of grey coming in on top, but I think you're about to come into your Clooney years, Lee. So I'm really looking forward to that.
He copied me.
We've got Keneal Rumar as well. He's in that lovely sweatshirt, Rugby League Coach. Wow, that's some product placement there. I really like that. You'll have to tell us a bit of a story about how you got
I'm more concerned about the weather down there. I'll be in Sydney next week, and he's got an hoodie on.
Yeah, it's the end of September. What's going on? And then, of course, we've got Mr. Andrew James Varley. And I don't forget first names when I hear him the first time, mate. So you're not going to get away with that, even though you've changed your name on the old Zoom. So how are you, mate?
I'm good, thanks, mate. How's yourself?
Yeah, really good, thank you. It's great to have you joining us.
Look at the head on him.
Regular.
Look at him. Look how proud he is.
I'm glad to have you joining us a bit more regularly on the you were once or twice in this sporadic. Now you're here week after week. I love it.
Yes, it was a bit sporadic. I can't promise every week, but I'll try and get on whenever I can. But it's good that I've had a good run at it over the last few weeks. So.
All right. Well, let's have a little bit of a conversation. Let's have you give us the Northern Report, Mr. Varley. The Super League Grand Final has been and gone. What did you think of the clash?
Well, I know last week I tipped Leeds to win, but St Helens just seemed to apply the pressure really, really well. But it's just I've watched a game through this. I must admit, I watched it with some friends on Saturday night, so I kind of half an eye on it. But I've watched it again this morning, and St Helens just seem to have good technique in the tackle defensively. The slow the attacking player down until he reaches the floor, and they seem to buy themselves time. And when they've got the ball, they find the front really easily, and it just seems to be a good structure. But the passes from James Rugby from acting halfback are so accurate. He's just a master of it. But the way he works with Johnny Lomax and the link that they have and the width that he passes to him, and then he's great. The first, and Lomax is a linchpin, but the first try that St Helens scored was only just after 3 minutes, and I just noticed the deception that they had there. They played to the right hand side to Morgan Knowles, who was suspended last week, but his ban was overturned. But they played to the right hand side to him, and then Jack Welsby. It must have been a planned move. It was only on the third tackle, but Jack Welsby came right, just flew around to the other side, and Robbie gave a good pass to Lomax, and then Matty Lees was on Lomax's shoulder, and he went for the short ball option. And it's like Jack Welsby was a foil to it, and it was such a cleverly planned move. And then that set the precedent for it. But it was just the pressure applied, the techniques in the tackle, the defence, and I think they just won the territory battle off the back of that, really. So,
sorry, mate, continue.
It's a major thing for them as well with Christian Wolf leaving. That was a major motivation.
Have they replaced him yet?
I don't believe that they have, Lee, unless it's some news that I've overlooked. I don't think they have. As yet, I'd have to. No, there's nothing. I've not heard any names mentioned of who's replacing him. So,
well, I was going to mention Christian Wolf. Obviously, his last game leading St Helens around before he comes down under and joins another red and white team, the Dolphins. And then, of course, against Rowan Smith at Leeds Rhinos, Lee. So sounds like a very technical battle, but happened between both coaches.
Yeah, I've not watched the game yet. So do you mind if I just ask James a bit more about how have they changed under Rowan Leeds, in your opinion, James?
just think it's just his style. I think they've just worked really well together as a team. He's just given them confidence. I mean, some of the players are saying that he's just giving them their heads a bit more. But the structures are better, and like I was saying last week with the moves from Hooker and everything, they just seem to work better as an attacking team. I mean, they did cause St Helens problems in the game. They did create problems for them with a very attacking flair style of game. But St Helens, I think, were just up to it just that bit more. But yeah, I can see Leeds performing very well next season. It'll be interesting to see who St Helens bring in. Really,
I think for me, Taylor, what I have seen of St Helens, and I had a good look at them at the start of the year. James is right. They're very good in the wrestle and whatnot. I actually think, though, the thing that shines through about Wolf to me is his man management as a coach. So you get some coaches that thrive technically. You get some coaches that thrive with man management at the opposite end of the scale. Most good coaches are a mixture of the two.
Mm.
And I'm not, Christian Wolf is obviously technical. I just felt that they might have dropped off a tiny bit technically after Justin Holbrook left. But when I say a tiny bit, I'm talking about the same tiny bit that North seemed to drop off a little bit when Rowan left. Because I think both Rowan and Justin Holbrook are both really intense coaches who focus really highly on certain things. Whereas certainly Wolf and maybe the two guys that took over at North have simplified things a little bit, reined some of the idiosyncrasies in, but managed the group really well.
Mm.
And I don't think one or the other is better or worse. I just think it's great. And it's great when a club moves on under a new coach and still keeps winning premierships, which both North Devils and St Helens have done, because, a lot can happen under an intense coach, for example, where the players get wound down. I mean, can you imagine being under Ricky Stewart in his pomp, for a couple of years? That could grate on you a little bit. And then if somebody comes in and just is a bit more arm round people than maybe Ricky is, then, and I'm sorry to do this to Ricky because I'm pigeonholing him a bit there, but sometimes that yin and yang can really work well. Yes. But the overarching systems of a club keep the thing together. And I've seen that. It's quite ironic, actually, that last week they both won a grand final, North Devils and St Helens. The problem is Rowan set up the one at North Devils and then was on the runners-up side of the podium in England, but he deserves as much credit for the one that happened in Australia, and it's his systems that are carrying through. And well done to the guys who took over from Rowan as well.
Yeah, they've done a magnificent job. And I was going to move on to last weekend's games. Now, Lee has submitted some topics here. And one of his topics was Penrith with their dominance in all grades of football and how well they've succeeded as a club this year, but seem to be quite sustained over the past couple of years. I would be remiss if not mentioning that if it was only for two losses on the weekend, we could have been talking about the Dolphins coming into an NRL season next year with an under-21s win and a Host Plus Cup win, which it wasn't to be. But I just have to mention that because I'm a Redcliffe boy through and through. Lee, the Penrith Panthers, SG Ball, Premiership, Jersey Flag, Premiership, and I forget the formal name of the New South Wales Cup this year. But they've
South Wales Cup on this podcast, New South Wales Cup.
But they've won the New South Wales Cup as well. So all three minor grades this year, and it just speaks volumes of the club and how it's been set up, doesn't it?
First, to your point about Redcliffe, mate, I guess it's very easy to forget when you come on the wrong side of two grand finals like that. I mean, what was the points differential? 4 in the Q Cup one, was it?
In both grades, I think it was 12 or 16 or something between
all right,
both
so
grades.
You're talking a few bounces of the ball, a few decisions, yada, yada, yada. They're in the ballpark, right? So, first of all, that's great signs for Redcliffe. Personally, I know they're going to be feeling the loss of both grand finals, but they need to look at it as a success. Penrith, you got to remember, I was a victim of Gus Gould's clear out. Never met the guy, and I got my P45. And of course, at the time, I didn't particularly like him, but I'm a better person than that, and I really respect what Gus put in play. He put a ring around Penrith, bought back the farm, basically. Kids that were leaving Penrith in droves to go to different junior areas weren't leaving in droves anymore. I remember drawing or losing. I think we drew with the Roosters at Harold Matthews once, and there was as many Penrith kids in the Roosters side as there was in the Penrith side at Harold Matthews, and that was what was going wrong. So he's done all that. He's bought back the farm. What he's also done is he's put a lot of regional centres out there. I know a couple of my mates are doing some work for the Bulldogs in Tamworth right now. Because Gus, that's what he's done. That's his modus operandi. So there's a lot of kids come from the bush. So that's what Gus has done over years and years and years. Of course, Gus didn't quite get it right with first grade sometimes. I mean, his treatment of Ivan Cleary and Anthony Griffin leave a lot to be desired, I think. But ultimately, that's just a small blight on everything else that he's done to change that place. People forget what a basket case Penrith was in the year 2012. It's now 2022, and they're probably the most dominant rugby league club for a very long time because they've won those grand finals, like you said. And as we record this podcast, they're favourites to win the senior grand final too. And you achieve that by having the same systems all the way through the club. So the juniors are playing the same way as the seniors and the kids growing up together. You know, if you look at Brian Toto, Nathan Cleary, Luai, a few of the others, they've probably played so much football together. And that was the key to the last great dynasty, if you like, of Slater, Cronk and Smith, and throw in Inglis. A lot of them played an awful lot of football together too, growing up in Queensland and then moving to Melbourne Storm. So I think it's not rocket science what's been done, but Gus set it all up and they've been smart enough not to change too much of the structural type things. And Ivan Cleary has, I think, matured as a coach, and I think it's the place to be, really. I think Penrith right now, whether they win or lose on Sunday, I think it's very sustainable what they've got to. I don't think that, I don't think premiership windows matter when you produce your own like they do. I think that's balderdash.
Rhaneil, you're based in Western Sydney, not too far from that Penrith area. Have you noticed a real change in and around the junior system, or do you keep your eye on the Harold Matthews SG Ball competitions and see where Penrith end up and their positions on the ladder, etc.?
Yeah, I think it provides a lot of opportunities, like avenues for these young kids, and I think, what Lee was saying before, like about these kids having that pathway at Penrith rather than trying to look elsewhere for an opportunity. So, yeah, I definitely agree there is that shift in terms of youth footy.
And it's very obvious to see Gus doing, setting up sort of a similar scenario at the Bulldogs. Of course, you mentioned they're out in Tamworth at the moment, Lee. They're also set up a massive base out at Toowoomba.
So that was going to be my next one. I think they've done something in Bundaberg, maybe Rockhampton as well. I mean, it's smart. It's smart. I guess where Gus benefits, and I guess I've benefited from this having a year out of coaching, and I could have a year out in 2023 as well. I'm happy doing what I'm doing at the minute. So, but you get a different perspective of things, so you don't get wrapped up in your own subculture, I suppose, or your own ecosystem. So for 12 years, I was in the schoolboy game. So to be fair, a lot of my focus and a lot of my day-to-day thought was on the schoolboy game and what was going on, and sometimes even to the detriment of, say, a Harold Matthews and SG Bore or Melbourne Inger or Cyril Connell. I just basically forgot to look at what was going on or whatnot, because you're so immersed, and you're obviously immersed in the X's and O's of each game. You're immersed in preparation and whatnot, and there's different forces working against you. And I think Gus has benefited from basically, I don't know if you're old enough, Taylor, to remember the time he was at the Roosters in a similar format in the early 2000s.
I was old enough. I remember I knew Gus Gould before Penrith. Like, I grew up thinking he was a Roosters man.
Yeah.
Through and through, obviously, then growing up and hearing a bit more history. Figuring out he was at Penrith, as well beforehand. But yeah, I grew up thinking he was a Roosters man.
And then what he did after that, basically, he was in the media for solely in the media for what, 15 years? So you sit back, you get to reflect on different things. I call it coming off the treadmill. And only sometimes when you get off that treadmill can you reflect on things that you did when you were on the treadmill. And I guess sat in the studios at Channel 9 or in the commentary box, he was constantly pontificating about the game and developing even more theories as he was going along. He used to write a great article in the Sydney Morning Herald, actually. So when you're in that mode, you tend to reflect a lot more rather than just go from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. So I think Gus really benefited from that. And there's something to be said for anybody who's out there, who's coaching or involved in rugby league in any way, shape or form, because sometimes you get that involved with being at your club all the time that you don't take time for yourself and you don't get time to reflect and get better at things. And I think it's when you do get off that treadmill that you do get better. So I think that's why Penrith benefited and the Bulldogs will benefit, because Gus had that time away, but he wasn't away. He was still building his connections and becoming even more of a doyen.
Absolutely. Well, let's see. Let's talk grand final. Grand final this weekend. Of course, Parramatta, they got through the Cowboys.
Did you even tip Para to get there? Can you remember, boys?
Yeah, I didn't. Actually, no. I last week I said I think Para beat the Cowboys, but I wanted the Cowboys to win.
What did you tip, Renil?
I think I tipped Para. I'm pretty sure. Could be wrong.
I might have to get the old recording up. What did you tip?
Varley.
I tipped the Cowboys. I tipped the Cowboys. Home advantage. Thought might be swinging.
It was a good game of football. Did you watch the game, James?
Yes. Well, I've actually watched it this morning. I've not had a chance over the weekend to watch. So I've caught it this morning.
Were you with your girlfriend?
Was the forward pass forward?
Well, at the weekend, yes.
Look at his face. Look at him.
Well, on Sunday I was working.
Shouldn't kiss and tell.
Yeah. I'll keep that under wraps. No, but it was very good. I watched it. Also, but something I noticed, I made a few little notes on it. I thought Robson, I thought Robson, the North Queensland hooker, played very well.
Who?
Rhys Robson.
Robson, is it Rhys?
Good player, him.
I was impressed by him, both in efforts defensively. And I've just got to know, I think it was the first try that, I've written some stuff down here on that one.
Look how proud he is.
Yeah, it was the first try that they scored, and Robson switched direction really well to score.
Yeah.
But one thing I noticed, I could go on for half an hour, but I won't. I'll go. Dylan Brown's got a good passing game, haven't they? Really good craft. But I think they link really well with the back rowers.
Dylan Brown doesn't catch the ball off his chest.
Right? No.
Catches it underneath like that. I was looking at that with my kids at the aim higher the other day.
Yeah, he's quite deceptive with his passing, isn't he? He's
he is. Yeah, he'll look like he'll go longer and he'll throw a short pass. But I thought didn't Shane Long play well? He was everywhere.
Yeah. Sean Lane.
Sean Lane, not Sean Long.
Shane Long. Yeah. Oh,
He's one of the most exciting back rowers I've seen for a while. He's emerged into. He's like a modern day. What was he called? The back rower who used to offload all the time for Parramatta in the early 2000s. Was he a Solomona?
It's not. You're not thinking Hindmarsh, are you?
No,
Hindmarsh didn't have an
offload.
This is me just coming out with.
They could offload milk out of cows. No, it was an Islander player.
It was an Islander?
Yeah.
Oh, you're killing me now.
I think it was Solomon. I think it was one of the Solomonas.
Was it David Solomon? Did he play for him?
It's definitely not. That might not be David. We'll have a look. But anyway, Sean Lane, brings back memories of that a little bit because he can throw a offload out from anywhere. Basically, he's doing really well. He surely is on the plane to the World Cup.
Are you talking about Joe Nullival by any chance?
Nope.
No, Feliti Mateo?
Nope. A bit too late that for Feliti Mateo.
Is it?
Yeah, you need to go early 2000s. When they made the 2001 grand final. In fact, if I'll do it, you keep hosting.
Is it? The only bloke I really liked from that side was Violecki. I thought he was an absolute player. Violecki.
He's a weapon.
He was a weapon.
And Gidley was in that side too, wasn't he?
Was he for Para?
Oh, was he?
No, Gidley played for the Knights, mate.
No, who was the centre they had? Tahu, Tamana Tahu.
Tamana Tahu, yeah, he was in the side, yeah.
So when was Lyon in the team? Would that be the?
I think he was there too.
Yeah, he was there too.
Yeah,
he was the centre.
He was.
Yeah, Jamie Lyon was outstanding. He was outstanding. He's one of those players that he was foregoing Origin towards the end, and they wanted to pick him. New South Wales were begging to pick him, and he said, "No, I'm retired from Origin football," which is absolute ludicrous to think about. But
I've got some Jamie Lyon stories to tell you if you can. Right. Don't forget, he was at Manly when I was at Manly.
Yeah. Go ahead.
The reason he didn't play Origin is just because he just didn't have that sort of approach to football. He was how can I put it? Bit laissez-faire about football, just one of them who just turned up to play, didn't want the scrutiny, hated the media attention. He won the Man of Steel in England, and apparently when he left the house, he'd put it down as the trophy, he'd put it down as a doorstop.
Yeah, right.
He just didn't see football in that way, Yeah.
Right. Laid back, fairly modest attitude, perhaps.
Yeah. So, he's a top bloke. He's a really nice bloke.
But just
laissez-faire. So, when people think about him not playing Origin, it's probably because of all the scrutiny and all the rubbish that comes with it. And if it's not for you, he just wanted to play football. And I think you'll find when he retired from the NRL, he just went to play for Weewa or something. Like, it's just...
Yeah.
And some people are like that.
Yeah.
Some people thrive in it. Some people hate it.
Yeah.
And some people just literally can't be bothered. And he was one of them. And I think you'll find Steve Matai might have been a bit like that too.
Matai? He could play football too, Steve Matai.
Yeah, he could.
Yeah, absolutely. But yes, anyway, we got off topic, but you're right. Rhys Robson, he had a cracker of a game. He's a player that had all the physical attributes for a long time as a junior at the Dragons. Rhys Robson had the speed, had the agility, had the strength, all those sorts of things. But you're right, this year it's the little nuances in his game that has propelled him to play even better brand of football. Now, did you think the pass was forward, Reniel? Mitch Moses, the pass for the first try in the first half, did it come forward out of his hands?
I actually missed that one. So I don't know. My dad was saying it was forward, and he supports Parramatta.
James?
I thought it was forward. Yeah, I thought it was forward.
Lee?
Yeah, very forward.
Very, very forward. It was a bit of a topsy-turvy first half for Parramatta, but they get through. They're now in the grand final. And now the next game, I missed this one. I was commiserating at the Redcliffe Leagues Club with two grades of men that just lost grand finals. But Souths v Penrith. Do you want to give me a little bit of a rap, Lee, about what you saw?
Souths and Penrith.
Souths and Penrith.
I actually went to bed 10 minutes into the second half. Because I'd flown to Sydney really early in the morning.
Oh, that's right.
At 3 and blah, blah, blah. So I watched the first half. I thought, game on, we're on here. And then it basically just felt like Penrith turned the screws up. And I could just see it coming. And I just felt South. I think South have overachieved. I think they've overachieved. When you think about the new half, Ilias is only a pup. You think about Wayne Bennett leaving and Adam Reynolds. Can you imagine the experience walking out the door with Adam Reynolds and Wayne Bennett?
Jeez,
that would take some adjustment. I think they've overachieved. I think they're in great hands with Demetriou. And I just think sometimes when a team's a bit above their station and they get to a point like that, they probably end up getting shown their backsides kind of thing. I think that probably happened to Leeds a little bit. You know, I don't think Leeds were ever going to win the Premiership, if we're honest. They probably aren't yet a grand final side, but they managed to get there. But really, were they ever going to win it? I don't know. And I guess that's how I feel about South in that semi.
It was quite interesting because Rowan Smith in his after-match interview almost made the point that sometimes you've got to lose one to win one.
That maybe, yeah.
He did make that point, and so I was proud of him. He's
sort of the perennial point that every losing coach says, though, isn't it, Lee, on grand final day?
What, you have to lose one to win one?
Yeah, it almost comes out of your mouth before the siren finishes.
I guess the fact of the matter is, right, you can look at Manchester City in England. They're very good at winning the Premier League because that's the first past the post system. You play everybody home and away. What they haven't done yet is won the Champions League. And when they were in the final a year and a half ago, they were playing another Premier League team that they were 4 places above in the Premier League and lost. And sometimes winning a big game takes a different mentality of player. When I say a big game where everything is on that game.
All the chips are in the middle.
Yeah. And I guess when you look at the makeup of squads, you sometimes need a few players who literally can deal with that pressure. I did a post the other day, and I'd love everybody's thoughts on this if you don't mind me doing this, Taylor. Latrell Mitchell, how good actually is he? Because I sort of figure the praise that gets heaped on him, he should be winning comps by now. You know, I feel like the praise is up here, but Latrell's still here a bit. I think he's obviously fantastic talent. His trajectory is good. I love the way he's rejuvenated South this year. He had a bit of the turbos about him, how he got South back up and running. He focused on his fitness while he was away, so on and so forth. But ultimately, I think he's still got a lot of a journey ahead of him, a lot of improvement in him. And I heard a point on NRL 360 today that I think it was Braithen Astor that said when he's having a bad day, that still has to be a good day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not a bad day. That's his next evolution. So I'd be interested in, everyone else's thoughts on that.
Well, yeah, you're very right in saying so. I think I believe, and I'm of this opinion, I think you're of this opinion too, that James Tedesco is the best fullback in the world. Now, that's because not only is he one of the best attacking, he makes the right choices all the time with ball in hand or a majority of the time, but he's one of the best defensive players as well. Now, the difference between a really bad game and a really good game for James Tedesco is very small. Very, very small. It's not a big margin at all.
It doesn't have shockers, does it?
No, it's still his worst game's still an 85 out of 100. You know, it's still an excellent game according to most experts. You know, I can't remember ever seeing a post-Origin player review or a post anything player review and seeing James Tedesco get anything under an 8.
And you remember his mentality when you
in a losing
were at
side.
St. Greg. Sorry, man. You remember his mentality when he was at St. Greg's. He was just literally like this mentally, you know. For those listening, I did a straight hand, like a straight line thing. Yeah.
I wish I could give you a straight hand. But very mature. But I believe you're right. That is the next evolution of Latrell's game. If he brings the difference between his best and his worst game to a very small number, as I said last week, Latrell's gotten really good this year at ejecting his energy into the game at the right moments. I think he's starting to manage that part of his game very well. When the game needs him, Latrell stands up and finds that moment. I just think all the other moments in the game, he needs to bring up to that 7, 8 out of 10 mark. Agreed. And once he starts doing all those off the balls type things that are considered sort of extras and that are considered, you know, that aren't flashy, that's when Latrell Mitchell's really going to stand up. But in reality, the way Latrell Mitchell plays, you may never see that. I mean, Greg Inglis was never really known for those sorts of plays, was he? He was never known for those little percentages off the ball or anything like that. He was just known to stand up in the big moments and be one of the best at it.
And I think Greg Inglis was like, he had a bit of the Mal Meningas about him too. Mal Meninga for me was a bit more, he'd run over you, not always around you. Greg Inglis could do over you, round you, under you.
Well, Latrell's proven he can do that as well. I think Latrell's proven he can do all of those things as well.
But not on the biggest stages, mate.
Well, he's won a comp.
That's my problem.
He's won a comp.
He has.
He's won a comp.
He has.
And when was the last time he wasn't in a semi-final series?
Yeah,
and you've said yourself that Souths have overachieved this year, and that's not necessarily due to Latrell Mitchell.
He's won Origin series.
He's won Origin series. He's played for his country. You two might dispute this, but he'll probably win a World Cup by the end of the year. It's. I think he's got an outstanding resume. The next step for Latrell is to be the shining star in a Souths premiership. I think that's definitely the next step in his career. He's been in a premiership team for the Roosters. The next step is to be the player of that game and of that sort of push. But I think he's very close to being. I think he's at least 90 to 95% of the way towards that praise he gets, Lee. I don't think he's too far from the mark. As I said, it's those little things off the ball that you see James Tedesco do so regularly.
Do you think he has to do that stuff off the ball though, or do you think he has to have more impact more times? So he does pick and choose his moments a fair bit. Jared Hayne used to do that. Jared Hayne used to sort of sit back for the first 15 to 20 and have a look at what was going on, and then inject himself when the midfield was a bit more tired. James Tedesco doesn't. He injects himself from minute 1 to minute 80.
But that's because James Tedesco's got that's his body type. That's what he does. He works so hard on his fitness to be like, I'm going to be on all the time.
And his game's evolved too. So he's putting more into his game all the time.
Yeah.
Passing both sides.
Latrell Mitchell's never going to be at that level. He's never going to be at that level that James Tedesco is. And there's only really a couple other fullbacks that ever have been like that. I mean, Slater's one of them. Minicello would have gone close. I still think he's a foot or two off Tedesco and Slater.
Minicello.
Yeah, I think so. I still think Tedesco and Slater are a cut above Minicello. That's my opinion. I was probably a bit younger at that stage. But yeah, look, in terms of Latrell Mitchell, I don't think he's too far off getting the praise that he receives.
Okay.
Anyone else want to say a little piece about Latrell?
I reckon with Latrell, like I get, a player like Greg Inglis and, his consistency and maybe Latrell Mitchell will never be up to that. But sometimes, and this is probably not good for the fans, but sometimes I do like a player who doesn't do as much, but then they'll walk into a game and just make it look like, just easy work. Like that talent, is very rare. I remember I think it was the old Ronaldo, the Brazilian Ronaldo. He would come from nights on a bender and, no training at all, overweight, but then, he'll score like 2-3 goals and just make it look easy. And yeah, I think I admire that about athletes sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. He's definitely a special fibre and power. James, before we move on to the World Cup, anything on that topic?
It's just a matter of having that consistency, really, and combining. I mean, defensively at fullback, what do you think of his defensive qualities compared to, say, Gufferson? Gufferson seemed to be everywhere for Parramatta.
Yeah, nowhere near. I don't think. I don't think Latrell's a fullback. I think he's a centre.
It just turned into a fullback, really. But yeah, Gufferson was everywhere. In fact, when we do the grand final preview later, but I think it'd be a good battle between Cleary and Gufferson on Cleary's kicking game against Gufferson. How Gufferson copes with that at the weekend.
I don't think if he plays in the centre, Taylor, he necessarily has to pick and choose his moments then, which could suit him.
Just when the ball gets to him, explodes.
That's it. Yeah.
I wouldn't mind seeing him play. If he's going to play centre, I would encourage him to play a roaming type centre, similar to Tom Trbojevic that we saw in that Origin series where New South Wales was so dominant. They had Latrell on one side, and then Tom Trbojevic sort of roaming through the middle, which he only really did, can I say, in between the 30 and the 30 metre line, like that middle part, the middle third of the field. Trbojevic really sat in the centre, roamed and took advantage.
That was brilliant from Brad Fittler. That was so
really
far out of the box. I don't think he ever truly got the credit he deserved for that.
He essentially played two fullbacks that game.
Yeah,
he played two fullbacks, and it was really it was sensational to see. We spoke about St Helens boys earlier in the podcast / video TV show, or whatever we like to call this little rugby league perch podcast. We also spoke about Leeds Rhinos, and that brings me to think Johnny Lomax, James Roby, the English World Cup side. Are you getting a little bit excited with some of the form of these players coming into the World Cup?
Well,
Lee,
yeah, it should.
James, someone from the north.
Yeah, it should be an interesting one, but it's just coping with the. There's some good players. I mean, look, at least just that link between Lomax and Roby was excellent. That's pivotal for them. Should be really interesting, and a player that showed up for Leeds who's had a career with numerous clubs is Zach Hardacre. He seems to be hitting some form for them at the moment. He's in the centres, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes as well.
My opinion, Taylor, is that the gap between the English Super League and the NRL probably hasn't been as big as this for maybe 25 years-ish when we played the 1997 World Club Challenge. But the problem is, I actually think the NRL has dipped in some quality over that time as well. So I think both are lower. So I think the standard of Super League really isn't in a great place, because I do watch some games and I get frustrated with the pace of it. I get frustrated with some of the tactics I occasionally see. I do get frustrated as well when I see some of the players that have come from Australia. So no offence to any of these, but Brodie Croft struggled to cement a place in the Brisbane Broncos team. fighting off wooden spoons, or indeed earning wooden spoons in 1 year. He's recently just picked up the Man of Steel award in England.
Yes.
Now, to be fair, this could have been the kick up the Jacksy he needed to get his career on track. I remember Jackson Hastings had a similar revival. But even if we're going to be really critical, Jackson Hastings has come back to the NRL. And look where West Tigers are, even though he's had a role there. So, but he's definitely a better footballer. So I think these are clear indicators. I'm sorry, but the clear indicators of where the game is at. I remember at the start of this season, one of my mates will remain nameless and the club will remain nameless. Sorry, two of my mates at two clubs that will remain nameless asked me what I thought of a couple of NRL signings that they'd made. And with the exception of one, I didn't know any of them. Never even heard the names. And then when I did Google them, you're talking 7 appearances. Like, it was ridiculous. And when some of our biggest clubs in England are taking on these players, I mean, you got to remember 20 odd years ago, they used to sign Matthew Johns, Adrian Lamb, Dave Ferner, Jamie Lyon, so on. That's who we used to sign. Steve Menzies. Many of them were at the peak. Many of them were at the peak at sometimes because the pound was a bit stronger. The pound isn't as strong now, everything else. So I think
that affects it.
The game is a perilous low in terms of standard at the minute. I really do. And I'm sorry to say this to all the English people who listen, and I'll be over there in a couple of weeks again. I really do think it's at a perilous low. So I can say categorically here now, England will not win that World Cup. Because for them to do, they need so many things to go right. And they've already got a couple of injury concerns. They've already had to fight lack of fair preparation as well for 2 years. I remember the absolute disgrace of the All-Stars game a year and a bit ago. So there's just no way England are going to win this World Cup.
I'll make a point as well, really. If Wayne Bennett had that Great Britain tour and lost all those games on that tour, he's got a successful record everywhere he's been. Doesn't that show the quality?
But the other thing though, mate, is that to be fair, that his England record was very good.
It was.
His England record was very good. Great Britain is another team, and it's 4 countries put together, and people mix those things up all the time, and it's not fair on the Scottish, the Welsh, and the Irish, is it? So, I guess my point is that, look how quickly Rowan Smith turned Leeds into grand finalists.
Yeah, from being
his eyes probably lit up when he saw some of the standards tactically and whatnot.
Oh yeah.
It's just you need so many things to go right for England to win it, and already a few things have gone wrong with a couple of injuries and whatnot. Victor Radley will add something. Australia are a little bit weaker, but I actually looked at one of their sides today, Taylor. When people put what their chosen Australian side up, mate, you're still strong as. Samoa are coming home with a bit of a wet sail, aren't they, with a few extra players. Tonga are obviously going to go well.
Tonga is strong.
New Zealand have got a bit of a vibe about them, I think, at the minute too. And they're a kind of team that get better when they're on tour and together. So, yeah, I just honestly, mate, I know you probably get excited watching Super League and that, but honestly, it just doesn't cut it compared to the NRL. And
I agree, really. But England and Samoa, that's a 50-50 game.
It is, and it shouldn't have been, really. No offense to Samoa, but there is no professional rugby league competition in Samoa, right? So there's two countries that have major televised rugby league competitions. Australia is one of them, Britain is the other. The whole economy of the game, the ecosystem of the game, shouldn't be allowing that to happen. It's almost like Algeria beating England or something in soccer, you know, like it's, you know, should the Premier League ever lose out to somewhere where they've not got that money flowing through? And I guess, you know, so that's what I mean. And I mean it, and I love Samoans and Tonga, I love it, but you know, that is just a clear indication of where rugby league in England has fallen off. And
it is. But,
they've squandered so much over the years, squandered so much.
Without too much disrespect, how close would Brodie Croft get to an Australian international team? Yeah, he's man of steel over here.
Yeah. It's just, you know, it just wouldn't come into the conversation.
No.
We've got here, Leeds, one of your points, World Cup promotion, knowledge of, etc. Talk us through that. What's your talking point here, mate?
Basically, in Australia, it's sort of been mentioned a little bit, but I've noticed that 100% Footy, NRL 360, they're ending this week. I know a lot of the journalists will go on holiday from the Telegraph, the Courier Mail, so on and so forth. The newspapers aren't likely to send too many journalists over because their circulations have gone right down. And I guess I think the Rugby League World Cup here is genuinely an afterthought in Rugby League. There was an article in the Telegraph today as we speak about a victory for Cameron Ciraldo because Tavita Pangai Jr. has decided not to play for Tonga and he wants to have an off-season and concentrate on the Bulldogs. Well, there's a couple of problems with that. Number one, it's not great. I'm not criticising Tavita Pangai. He's got his own issues. I understand that with his game, whatever. That's fine. It's a personal decision. But there should never have been any pressure on him to not play for his country. Secondly, the fact that the journalist and the person who did the headline saw this as a victory for Cameron Ciraldo as a new coach. I mean, was it a war? Was it a game? I didn't know. As a coach, I'd want my players to experience these representative things. And I know it doesn't look after my bottom line of performance, and I know that the club will be unhappy if their star recruit gets injured, but this just tells me everything that's wrong about the way Australians see the international game. So it's getting scant coverage over here. I spoke to a mate in Southern England the other day, James, who said nobody has a clue.
Right.
That is going on. I coached in a World Cup game in 2013 in Bristol, where my mate is, and it was jam-packed full of people. Where's the legacy been for that? You know what? I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't know how much promotion there should be, but I just know that everybody knows there's a Qatar World Cup in football. It gets threaded through everything that you read about. When you read about football, soccer, it gets threaded through all the time. We just don't do that in rugby league, do we? What's it like in England, mate? Is it things building up or
things? Well, I was in Newcastle a month ago, but that's where the opening game is going to be held. There were adverts in the railway station and everything, and I've heard stuff on the radio, like Talk Sport Radio.
What kind of stuff?
Just advertising the World Cup.
So they've paid for some advertising, basically.
They've paid for some advertising, but I do also wonder. But marketing pays for itself. But I do also wonder what the financial state of the RFL is, really, as well. I mean, it's you know, through COVID times.
For what I know, they basically need a very good World Cup.
Yeah, so
they do. Which is fine, you know, they're not going to want a bad one. But, you know, I probably sound overly negative there. I don't know. But again, it's just that article today, victory for the Bulldogs, victory for Cameron Ciraldo because he's not playing for his country.
Can I play devil's advocate here, Lee?
Yeah, you can.
Thanks. Would that have anything to do with the new format of competition that's been announced today throughout the NRL? 27 rounds of football now that there's a new side. So an extra 3 rounds, every side will get 3 buys in the new year. The season will officially be longer. The first game will be on the first weekend of March. Official trials to kick on the first weekend of February. Do you think because of the World Cup, there's certain amounts of, we all know there's a Rugby League Players Association. There's certain amounts of time off they have to have before they can come back and play. Coaches preach the importance of a preseason. Look at Peyton and the Cowboys this year. He spoke heavily about how
David Solomona.
What about that? Oh, David Solomona.
Was it David Solomona?
Yeah.
There you go. Very good. David Solomona is actually working for the RLPA now, so that's a great segue.
Yeah, that's why I said it.
Yeah.
So David, Todd Payton spoke all the time about how he toughened up the Cowboys this preseason. How he took them on they woke them up at all hours to train, and they did these big Castle Hill runs that they do in Townsville and all sorts of crazy things in that ridiculous humidity up there. So that in preseason is obviously very important. It's very important for all those reasons. If you have a World Cup that's running deep into November, and then all of a sudden after that, you've got the season starting earlier, you need players to have some sort of a break in between. The NRL's come out and said, well, the RLPA said they were happy for players to do this because they said they'd rather get fitter through games rather than just doing a preseason, which is what I would have said as well. But, do you think that's why they've said it's a real win for clubs? Are clubs sort of pushing back on this because, well, the competition's just gotten a lot bigger. They're talking about making it 18 teams as well within a couple of years. Like, is it getting too much for our players?
Oh, look, I always bang on about that too, but this World Cup is extremely popular. Most players are wanting to go. The vast majority of players are wanting to do it.
I want to go.
There's a whole generation not had that much kangaroo activity, for example. They used to go on tours. To your point, if it was a real problem, I think there'd be a lot more pull out. I have worked at a club in one of the two hemispheres, that's all I'll say, where I know for a fact the chairman was offering money for the players not to represent their country at the end of the year. The great Manchester United manager Alex Ferguson used to put pressure on players sometimes to not play in English friendlies or Scottish friendlies.
Or gigs with Wales.
Or gigs with Wales. But he'd never, ever stop them going to a World Cup or a European Championship. The Football World Cup is literally probably the biggest event that ever takes place on the world. It's probably bigger than the Olympics. It grosses that much. The Rugby Union World Cup is huge. It transcends anything in the game. It hides things that might not be that good in the game. And if you look at the sponsorships around the ground and everything else, they have big companies sponsoring them. We have it all wrong in rugby league. It shouldn't even be a discussion topic.
It's sad. It's sad, really sad.
It really is.
Fantastic sport. But like you say, rugby union just gathers the profile. And
but that's one of the reasons it has the profile, mate, is because international football in rugby union takes precedence or has more power.
More power. I was just going to say what you said. It's based on the international game, and it doesn't always have to be the standard of play of the game. It's the actual profile of the event.
Correct.
So
do you not think that maybe rugby league doesn't have this big World Cup presence because I think people just think it's going to be New Zealand or Australia that'll win? I mean, do you think that's why it's not a genuine? Do you think that's one reason?
Well, what came first, the chicken or the egg? You've probably got a point there. I do think when the Kangaroos started whooping our backsides in the year 1982, the Invincibles, it was the gulf was huge. Forget about what gulf I just spoke about then earlier. The gulf then was huge. So
and
I guess
86 was the same. 86 was similar, wasn't it? That's when I really started watching it. And,
yeah, I was going to say that. And we fought back a little bit, but we had this problem called the Super League War.
Yeah.
And everything then seemed to go in the power of the clubs. So during the Super League War, there was a 1995 World Cup, which I still believe was the best one, or one of the best ones to date. And I think a lot of the momentum of that was disturbed by the Super League War. So we've not really had a proper international cycle since then. There was a lot of momentum. Cycles are everything. So when Great Britain got whooped in 82, all focus then was on trying to do better in 86. When they got whooped again, you might have thought some of the apathy crept back into Australia, but then in 1990 we won the first test, so things were lit up again. We also won the third test back in 88 in Australia. So the momentum, the cycle was growing, things were building up, interest was building. England or Great Britain did have the opportunity to beat Australia because they were doing it all of a sudden. Yeah. And then we had a Super League War and it really messed things up, and we've never really had anything solid since then. So I guess because that power went back to the clubs, so when the clubs split in Australia, they were holding the game to ransom, weren't they? And that's why I think a lot of the clubs still have the power now, because in theory they could walk away, I think. And if they don't get what they want, so the players' union comes in and says what they want, but then the clubs fight back and blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, so I think that's what's happened. A bit of apathy, but then also the game got blown apart. It literally got blown apart, and more emphasis went on clubs. And while we were blowing ourselves up, rugby union went professional.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, it did. And also in England, of course, England won the Rugby Union World Cup in 2003, which will have helped that profile.
Right. So do you think now, looking at Tonga, Samoa, even Victor Radley choosing to play for England, the more competitive this World Cup is, the more interest it's going to draw? Do you think a lot of these players changing codes and going to your Tongas and your New Zealands and your Samoas, it sounds like it's going to be very good for the game?
Who are you asking?
I'm asked. Well, how about this? I'll ask Raniel.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, as a spectator, I just feel like, the Rugby League World Cup, realistically, when is a team other than Australia going to, be competitively like winning the actual competition?
Well, it
New
could
Zealand won the last one, didn't they?
It could be happening a bit. Yeah, New Zealand won it in 2008.
I would like a separate competition, with all the sort of Pacific Island teams, and it like just different conferences. I think that might make more sense.
You just want Fiji to win something, that's why.
Well, I'll tell you what, I wouldn't be opposed. How often do we have a World Cup? Every 4 years. I wouldn't be.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, well, COVID aside, every 4 years.
No, 1995, 2000. How many years is that? 5?
Yeah, well, that's my last
one. 2008.
Yeah.
So there's your cycles. Meanwhile, how many of rugby union had in that time? How many of football had in that time? And every 4 years. And you know what happens when they're every 4 years? Just check your phone, James. I've just sent you something.
All right, hang on. It's just over on the side of the room.
You don't have to hang. You don't have to hang on. Don't have to. Yeah, just right. Yeah, go on. When you have things every 4 years, people can plan around that. You were talking about injuries and time in pre-season. English Premier League have got the World Cup smack bang in the middle of their season this year. Like,
really?
where does every other year the World Cup's on, it interrupts their pre-season. But this year it's in Qatar, so it's in November. Normally the World Cup's in July or whatever. Now it's this year because it's in Qatar. But you don't, there's nobody pulling out of that. Why? Because it's a big corporate event. There's money to be had because it's been built up over years. If you look at some of the early football World Cups, they weren't that spectacular. But they was just there every 4 years, just like Christmas Day's coming, every 4 years, and we just fart around with it.
Yeah, see, we've even lost the Tri Nations now that you think about it. We've lost the Tri Nations.
And the Ashes.
I'd like to see I'd like to see World Cup go every 4 years. It needs to be on a cycle. It needs to be on a constant cycle at a minimum.
Yeah.
And then, in the alternating, in the 2 years in the middle, why not do a Tri Nations or something like that? And you could do a Tri Nations with the Pacific teams. And I'll tell you what, I'd still tune in and watch it. You could do a Four Nations with the Pacific sides and I'd still tune in and watch it. There's certainly a lot of options to be had. But I think you're right, Lee. Until we see more respect given to these international games, the more you say it, you're making a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. I always do.
All right, fellas. Rugby League Coach, episode number 17.
You've disappeared, Taylor, from the screen. You hid behind the moon.
Yeah, because I heard you talk about yourself again, and I went, I'm out. Saying you never do.
What would you like to say, Ranil? You've hardly said a dicky bird.
Yeah,
so the hoodie, you had to get it tucked in, did you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Lovely hoodie you're wearing. For those watching on a podcast, listening to me, he's got the Rugby League Coach hoodie on.
Very comfy. I took it camping with me.
Yeah. What size is it?
Very warm. It's a extra large, I think.
No, it isn't. It was a large.
Where did you have to get it tapered?
You're just skinny.
Where'd you have to get it tapered?
I have like a tailor that I normally like for like alterations. So yeah, she did a pretty good job, and fits well, but it's still roomy enough.
Yeah,
it's breathable, especially like if you have like a big dinner or something, and yeah.
Is a Lee Addison large a normal man's extra large or something? Is that what you're saying?
Take your issue up with Kukri, you make the kits, thank you. I want to know what James is going to do without Rugby League to watch on Saturday night.
Well, yeah, that's for it's a weekend off as well, Lee, so I'm not working, so
what are you going to do? Cricket's over. You know what's rubbish about living in England?
Yeah. Go on.
The two best sports finish at the same time.
Yes, yeah, with the cricket.
Do you know what I mean? So,
of
course, I'm a big football fan too, so it's not too bad. But if you like rugby league and cricket, they start and end at similar times. Here, as one's finishing, I know I've only got a couple of weeks to go until I can go to the Gabba or something. Like it's.
When's the darts? When's the darts season?
That's to ask Taylor that.
When's the what? Sorry.
January, darts. Just after Christmas, it tends to be a big tournament, don't they? It's good, the darts.
I don't watch darts.
You look like a darts player.
Yeah. I have a few darts after about 12 beers. That's
we just said it with the darts. It's a marketing. Money's put into it. The marketing of it's superb.
Yeah, it is.
That's what it is.
Exactly. It's very good. Very good.
It is. So I'll miss the. So when do the test matches start over there then, Lee? Australia,
it's the T20 World Cup first. I'm just looking now that Australia play the West Indies in a T20 on October the 7th.
Right.
I'm a member of the Gabba. They best not try and charge me to go to that.
Do you watch the Sheffield Shield matches sometimes?
I do. I like it. I like the Sheffield Shield. I love cricket, mate. I'm a massive cricket fan.
I thought you were booked in on October the 7th anyway.
Yeah, I am, but who says we can't do that?
No one.
Thank
Zero
you.
people said we can't.
I've got member seats. We'd be fine.
There you go.
Mate, I spent the whole Ashes test last year in the bar, in the members bar, aircon. Luckily, it was only 4.5 days. Imagine it went.
I was going to say, didn't last very long, did it? Really, unfortunately.
No, it did. It lasted longer than some of them.
You did, yeah.
So,
All right, gentlemen. Well, it seems we've come to a bit of a natural ending to our podcast today.
yeah.
Talking about the cricket.
Do you like cricket, Taylor?
I played cricket in under sixes and under sevens.
Didn't ask about your playing career. I said, do you like cricket?
And I
in 1992, I did this.
I was ripped off the field by my parents never to play again because they hated spending all their Saturdays watching me throw a little red ball around. So that was the end of my cricketing days. And then I never watched much cricket. I didn't play it, and I'm one of those guys that I like to play it to get an interest, and I like to know intricacies. And sometimes when I watch cricket, I just feel a bit dumb because it's just a different world.
What about you, Renil?
Oh, I can't stand cricket. It's too slow.
You like it, don't you, James?
Yeah, I do. It's my second favourite sport.
I love it.
Rugby league. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
It's my other favourite sport.
Yeah, I know you love it, Lee. I know you
really do.
Yeah, but you love all your sports, mate. You love soccer too. You like, you're just right into it.
Boxing fan.
Are you a boxing fan?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't like UFC and all that.
I love MMA. I love UFC.
I don't like golf.
I appreciate the skill in golf, but I
don't watch tennis.
To watch it.
So you said I like all my sports. I like 3, 4. I actually like rugby union now in AFL.
You like rugby union and AFL?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. I think AFL, this is going to sound terrible for a rugby league coach podcast, but I think AFL is very entertaining to watch at the ground compared to on the TV.
Well, you're not saying anything that isn't said all the time.
Because it's just a hive of activity. James, have you ever seen it? You ever seen an AFL game live?
I've never seen one live. I've seen it on the TV. It just seems to be an event. That money's put into. But I think rugby union has improved as well. To be fair, that's also improved the sport. The recycling of the ball's fairly quick now.
Yeah, no, I like AFL Live is completely different. I reckon just a hive of activity. There's so many off the ball things in AFL, that you can watch. It's quite exciting to watch those battles, and it's a real one-on-one battle between you and your opposite, for a large period of time. It's funny. You watch them get over the top of the other person, then all of a sudden they're on top and.
You've been listening to AFL Coach podcast.
You've been listening to Lee Addison of the AFL Coach podcast.
Lee Addison on the AFL Coach podcast.
Talk about everything from Wangaratta to Cairns.
When is the AFL season actually run from? Is it the similar
grand final was last week?
Grand finals last weekend,
yeah. Rugby league, really.
The Cats.
Robbie Williams was the pre-match or half-time entertainment.
Right.
I think. Robbie from Brisbane is that's pretty much entertainment in the NRL.
Yeah.
I think Jimmy Barnes. I think they're wheeling him out.
Oh, I saw a headline today that said Beyonce has boarded a plane for Australia. Is she going to be the NRL entertainment, pre-match entertainment? I went, you are kidding. I said, first of all, there's no way NRL has the money to pump out for Beyonce to come all the way over here. Wouldn't happen. And they wouldn't do that anyway. They'll bring out Tina Turner before they bring out Beyonce. Simply the best.
What you get is what you see.
Actually, I think it is Tina Turner. There's something announced. I'm looking it up right now. NRL Grand Final.
Pre-match entertainment.
Game entertainment. Jimmy Barnes and Bliss and Esso.
Brilliant. I'm gonna sit in front of the TV early.
Oh yeah, I can't wait. I absolutely can't wait.
Some of the abuse I've copped on social media this week has been hilarious.
Why?
Just people just saying things like, I think they read one line and then of a 28-line post and go, just jump to a conclusion and then say that I'm on crack. Basically, like, it's hilarious.
But not a considered opinion of your
Correct.
status. That way. Yeah.
Oh, it's hilarious.
I want to find one of these people that says you're on crack, and I'm gonna message him and say, I think you're right. I've seen it. He does it. I'm gonna stir the pot. Oh.
So I did a post the other day. So Para got to the GF last night. Yes, they were helped by a very forward pass. And then I talked in a paragraph about the bunker. And then after that, I put, anywho, enough of that. And then I started talking about the Eels and why they care. And so, like, here's one. Who bloody cares? There were a number of forward passes missed last night.
Oh, wow.
Right, there's one. That's one of the... I hear a lot of whinging. Get over it. There's another one. Mate, there's so many. Hey,
mate, you got 240 comments on that.
I know. Honestly, it's crazy.
But you know what? I like this one. This is one of the most sensible and correct reflections of our season. Correct. Congratulations, and a great article that summed up our year perfectly. Joanne Gregory, absolute superstar.
Somebody has said to me, who cares about your opinion or something, blah, blah, blah. I replied, about 15,000 people who follow this page.
Oh, this is one of the all-time sprays. Albanese and Mitchell have a lot in common. Both support Souths, both love the limelight, and both disappear when it comes to doing the hard yards. They're both way overrated by the media and both egotistic clowns.
Oh,
See what, Mr. Benjamin telling you how he really feels. I like that.
Oh, there's so many.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, there's so many. I wish I'd have prepared them because it's just, I was just thinking about it. Then it's just. Yeah, it's hilarious. What somebody says, somebody literally wrote just before we started recording, "Are you on crack?" And because all I did was focus on the first two lines, like.
Oh, I love it. And you know what? There's some people. This is There's someone says very well said. Excellently written article. The humble sportsman will always edge out those who think they are the greatest. And then someone just goes, Latrell done what he always does. Bloody nothing. Is that not the most Australian comment ever?
Bloody nothing.
Bloody nothing. He did bloody nothing.
Oh, right.
Oh, I love this. Mitchell looked lazy last night. I might have a look at your profile picture and see how you look.
Yeah. The funniest thing is the people who write 4 days after it's been posted and then say, get over it. So if I was on something, I wasn't over something. It's been posted 4 days ago anyway, so probably I'm over it.
Yeah.
And then it's
you probably hadn't thought about it 10 minutes after you posted
I've replied to people, they've said, get over it. The amount of times I've wrote back, get over what? Because I don't know what I meant to have got over.
Oh, you could have some really fun.
I do.
Yeah, you could have a lot of fun with that sort of stuff. Oh. Oh, well.
Oh, there we go.
Yep.
That's the world we're in.
That's the world we're in. Everyone gets to have an opinion on social media.
Is Neil still there, or has he replaced himself with a cardboard cutout of himself? I love Renil's hair. Let's just all clap Renil's hair.
Oh, come on.
There's some of those ringlets would just be
blatant.
blatant.
You're the only one not clapping, James.
I feel like
some of those ringlets would just be blatant circles.
Look at it, yeah.
I'm telling you, if Mick Fanning had a good look at your hair, he'd get lost in one of them barrels. Have a look at it.
Imagine James with that hair.
I wouldn't mind a bit more colour to my hair.
It's getting very late at night for me to be thinking about that combination, Lee.
What about this podcast? What about this podcast where I say, right, that's it, we're coming to the end, and then we just talk crap for 20 minutes?
Yeah, that's all right. That is
I wonder how
it
many
is.
people scroll just in the last 10 minutes just to see how we're going.
People might do that. People might do that.
I'll just say a coach who's done very well in England though before we go, Lee. Craig Lingard at Batley. with a very limited resources, just got to the grand final in the championship, which is interesting. I know just going back to the English, England's done really well.
No, the reason I'm smirking is because we're clearly not talking about anything rugby league now, and now you've just brought up a rugby league fact.
I just brought back up to this, yeah.
He had it written down on his dot point and he couldn't let it slide.
Yeah.
I've written it down. I must say it. It's here now. It's being done.
I know it's a bit random.
Is there anything else, James, before we knock off? Is there any other points you need to get out?
No, not really.
Liz Truss and her new Chancellor revealed an emergency budget last week.
I don't really follow politics that much.
I wasn't asking. So I'm just thought I'd do it, James, and just say something randomly about what's going on in England.
Very true. Yeah. Good point.
The Prime Minister's 13 successfully defeated Papua New Guinea on Sunday.
Yeah.
That's true. That happened.
Right.
They look for some
As
good
they
players.
always do. I reckon they just cut and paste the score every year and just put that in the report.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Papua New Guinea didn't. I don't think that was Papua New Guinea's best side either, really, was it?
No. Was Stanley Jean playing?
They just threw it out there. Stanley Jean, no.
Adrian Lamb. It wasn't the best side then. Marcus Bai, was he playing?
Marcus Bai could play football on the wing there for the Storm. Marcus Bai could play football. They'd have a pretty good best 17, Papua New Guinea.
A lot of them play in the Q Cup now, don't they?
Yeah,
let's go back to football. You know, Gus was basically saying Penrith will batter North.
When did he say that?
In the comp. He didn't say those words, but he was intimating that, yeah.
You know what? I actually really, really hope that Norths have got off the piss in time. I think you'll find that most Q Cup clubs celebrate more than they do in New South Wales Cup.
Well,
I think it means more.
I think that's because the Q Cup was first seen as the first grade over here before the Broncos came in the comp.
Yes.
Whereas the New South Wales Cup has always been the reserve grade.
Yeah. I think there's more of a care factor for Q Cup clubs than there is for New South Wales Cup clubs. So when they win the comp in Q Cup, they celebrate really hard because that's the epitome. And I think that's probably more so what's happened in the last, since 2015 than anything else.
Yeah.
But you've got to remember it was 2015. Ipswich won it, then 16, 17, 18, 19. So 4 years, New South Wales won it. But, they weren't big margins. I think the Bulldogs Dolphins one in 18 was the biggest margin. They weren't huge margins. They were fairly close games.
Because the Penrith fellas will be on the Gypsies kits as well, though. You would assume.
But they probably have a lot more full-timers that would have to rock up to training this week and would have to train and prepare for grand finals. So
run a pose to get
Yeah, they probably might have had one night on the piss and stopped, but you'll find the North Devils probably found sunlight and then they probably saw the end of a few UDLs or whatever they were inclined to drink over at Bishop Park. And as they should. I wrote them off. The Devils. I need to issue a public apology at some time.
I don't know if did I write them off in the QLS preview last week? Or did I just
No, you didn't write them off. You thought North could win a close game, or the Dolphins
close game, or
the Dolphins would win by a lot, and North's won. Mate, they never defended so good. The North Devils are outstanding in defence.
Can I go to bed now? I'm knackered.
Yeah, you can. All right, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in to the Rugby League Coach podcast.
Toodle pip.
We will see you all next week.